Okay, so welcome back to your TRA GFX tutorial. This one is going to be kind of like an add-on to the last one. We're going to still be talking about character posing, but this time we're going to be talking about characters, specifically those characters that have armor, and then parenting armor parts to a rig so that when you move parts of the rig using armature, the actual armor parts will move with the rig arms, and it's a lot easier to pose your characters more realistically. Alright, so let's get started. Let's delete our default cube and our light. We won't need them. And let's go over here into our render settings. And again, let's turn ourselves on to cycles render. Awesome. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's import our rig. And that's my bad. You don't import the rig as an OBJ. You're going to want to go to File, Append, and then you're going to want to go to your rig. So again, that's in my downloads. Then rig. Great, I've got it. And then when I like to upload things, there's two ways you can upload it. You can upload via collection or via a object. Object is the easiest, so you just go into the object folder here. You're going to click A to select everything, and you want to append it from the library, and then you go, imports the entire rig in. But it also imports all these kind of useless parts here. So again, we're going to move that along the x-axis, and let's delete all these parts. So I'll just kind of go over what I did right there. I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to select part of what I was using, and pressing B, that's going to give me this little thing here, and it's going to allow me to select a lot of things all at once just by clicking and dragging. Awesome. So now I'm going to go ahead and just X to delete. Awesome. So let's bring our rig back here in the middle. Alright, looking good. Now we can import our armor. So for this, I'll be using a stormtrooper. So we'll just go import, wavefront.obj, and we'll import that stormtrooper. And something else I didn't necessarily mention is that when you import to Blender and you import an OBJ, it's all going to kind of come in as, like, let's say I wanted to import my Stormtrooper and I just selected everything in Studio. Then it's going to import everything as one solid OBJ, and it's going to be super hard to differentiate the different parts of the morph and assign it to different parts of this rig. So you can kind of see here, I'm importing everything in one by one, like separate piece by separate piece. So for everything I would want to have attached to a different part of the body, I'm going to import that separately. And it might be a little bit, it is definitely a little bit tedious, but it's the only real way that I know of right now to import things like this and be able to parent it. If you know another way, leave it in the comments or something, but this is just how I'm going to teach you guys. Okay, so now that you've gone ahead and you've imported your entire morph, I'll kind of speed that section up for you, just kind of show you how tedious and long it is. You want to take your rig and let's line up our rig and our morph. So for this rig specifically, I just select the bottom and I use my key codes, which can be GX and all that good stuff. So I'll line it up with my armor pieces. I find lining the rig up is easier, and sometimes you can kind of see with this rig, it's a little bit too small for the scaling on this Stormtrooper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make sure that it's just lined up with the feet and the chest. That's the most important part. It's like the hardest to kind of change. And I'm going to change the arms of the Stormtrooper. Arms and legs are the easiest things to change placement of. Torsos, not so much. So you always want to make sure you're lined up with the torso before anything else. That's kind of the most important part of the rig to be lining up. Okay, so I've got these armor pieces, and I've lined up pretty nicely with my rig. Awesome. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is we are going to start assigning these to different parts of the rig. So you can kind of see here in my object panel, I've got this rig here, and I've got all this information. But what I want you to really pay attention to is bone groups here. Now, inside this rig, there are going to be several different kind of bone groups. You're going to have left upper arm, left lower arm, you have hand, left lower leg, etc. And you want to take the parts of this, you want to take the parts of the armor or the parts of the R15 morph, and you want to assign them to the bones that match up with where they are on the body. And in order to do that, we're going to do something called parenting. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to select this will be our left upper arm. We're going to select this rig, and we're going to press Control P, and we're going to parent it. You can see down here by armature deform with empty groups. Awesome. Okay. So now let's click this. We'll press Tab to go into edit mode. Then we'll go down here to our vertex editor. And you can kind of see we've got all the bone groups down here. These are all the vertex groups. So I'll bring this out here so you can see a little bit better. That wasn't the right button. There we go. Bringing it out so you can see a little bit better. And this morph specifically is oriented this way. So that is going to be our left upper arm. So let's find that. There it is. And I'm going to click Assign. Awesome. Okay, so now I'll just show you how this works. We'll take our rig. We'll go into pose mode up here. We'll click up here in this arm, and let's rotate it along the x-axis. And there you go. You can see none of the rest of the morph moves with it, but after I've gone and I've parented this to the morph, that part of the armor is going to stick with that part of the rig. And that's going to make your posing a whole lot easier. And that process, I'll show you guys a couple more times, but basically you're just going to do that with the entire morph, pressing Control P every single time. Okay, so I'll show you guys a couple more times, but I will speed up while I'm doing it. The whole kind of the basis is select what you want to parent first. So you select the armor first, then pressing Shift and clicking on the rig, Control P, parent with empty groups. I'm going to go into edit mode on the piece of armor. And this part is the torso. The nice thing is there is a search key somewhere on here, I believe. Okay, I know it's on here somewhere, but you're just going to want to parent it with torso, assign, and awesome. Okay, so I'll speed up the rest of this while I parent everything else. Okay, so now that you've got your entire, everything kind of assigned to your different parts of the rig, you can start texturing. And again, texturing is something we went over in our previous tutorial, but I'll go over super quickly how I like to texture certain metals, like this Stormtrooper. But pretty much, if all you wanted to know from this tutorial is how do I assign different parts of a R15 morph, or how do I assign different parts of armor to a rig, this is your answer. Because you can see, I can bend everything super nicely, and I can probably give him a nice little pose holding a gun if I wanted to. Posing is something we can probably go over in another video, but something I find is you kind of have to experiment with posing yourself and try different things before you can really kind of get good at it. And there's no real way, I find, that you can teach proper posing. It's all kind of about experimentation. But what I like to do is, if I'm kind of struggling to figure out how would somebody hold this, or what would a proper pose look like, what would a proper arm look like holding this gun, and so I'll imagine how I'm doing it. I'll kind of hold it and see, okay, what does my elbow look like? What does my arm look like? What does this look like? What does that look like? And that kind of helps me figure out what exactly everything should be looking like in the grand scheme of things. So for this guy, he's going to be holding an E11, so I'm going to rotate this. We'll rotate this guy up a bit. Rotate along the Z axis. Move him Y. Bring this up because he's probably not going to be that casual. And that's not ideal, but it'll work. Awesome. So what I'm doing here is I'm just selecting different pieces of the armature, and I'm moving them using those commands we talked about earlier. Alright, so let's bring this guy up, and let's go into our shader editor. Awesome. So get rid of those menus, and we'll go back into object mode, and we'll click on these, and you can see I've already got a texture on here from one of my previous renders, but I'll kind of just walk you through. Just give it a second here to render. It's taking a little while because my screen recording software is making things a little bit slower. There you go. You can kind of see it coming in now. We've got a bit of a shock trooper. Okay, awesome. So, what we'll do for a normal stormtrooper, this guy's textured, which is a little bit different. But for a normal stormtrooper, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have these textures here. And it doesn't seem to want to let me move. Yep. It's just a little bit laggy right now. So let's see, where did that texture go? I think I lost it. There we go. Okay. So, when you start off with the basic texture, you're just going to kind of have this thing called a principled BSDF texture. So, with our, I'll bring up a little preview here so it's a little bit easier to see. Awesome, there's our preview. So, let's wait for it to load in. Okay, you can see it's your pretty average kind of shape right now. But that's not what Stormtrooper armor looks like. Stormtrooper armor is nice and shiny. So let's bring down this roughness. You can see what that's going to do is we take our roughness down. This becomes a lot more shiny. Roughness down. Metallic up. And you can kind of see it's getting a little bit shiny up there. And it's shiny in there. Okay, that's good. I'm going to name this Stormtrooper. Awesome. Okay, and this is going to make things a lot easier. So I'll just select each part of the individual thing. I'll go to this. I'll look up ST, give me Stormtrooper, and I'll just click and assign. And that's a lot easier than going through and trying to assign a different material to everything every single time. And it also makes sure that when you edit one material, it edits all the materials. So I think if I select numerous parts here, no, it doesn't work that way, I don't think. So I'll speed this one up too, just going around. You click on that little circle here, type in your texture name, and you pretty much just assign it. So, I've got this all textured up, and I'm just going to kind of change a couple things in the armature sometimes. You're going to have to move things. You saw a little bit earlier, I changed that leg, and I forgot to do this guy. So, Stormtrooper, awesome. Alright, and now we'll go and we'll click on our rig, and we'll give him a nice black texture. So, all we'll do here is we'll delete all of these. It's purple now, it has no texture. We'll add an output, material output node, then we will go Shift A, shader, and we want principled BSDF. So we got principled BSDF, awesome, and we'll plug it into that shader there. Okay, and we want it to be black, and that's kind of a nice little kind of sheen on there that makes our model look a little bit better. Okay, roughness down, metallic up. And I'm liking that. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got all of our textures done. Let's bring this window out of there a little bit. Not that much. Okay, and let's take a look at our render. So we're going to go from material settings, which is this little knob here, and we'll go into rendered look, which is going to take us to our cycles render engine. And the helmet's a little bit goofy, so I'll change that super quick. There, I guess better. Okay, so you can see it's all kind of coming out a little bit nicely, but there's no light source, so the whole thing looks kind of crappy. Now, in the last tutorial, I showed you guys how you could use an HDRI to give your character some nice lighting. That's still true, but another way to give your character some nice lighting that I find is to make a light room. The way you do that is just you take a bunch of lights and you move them around and you position them so your character is fully lit. So I like to use area lights, so let's bring in an area light, Shift A and add it. Scale this up. Not too bad. Let's use nodes for it so we can change its strength. Bring our node editor up a little bit. And I don't know where this light texture went. There it is. Awesome. And let's give that a little bit of a strength boost. Nice. Okay, I like that overhead texture, but we could also use some lights in different places because there's not always just one light source. So I'll bring this over here, and clicking on this little yellow button here, we'll move this so it's pointed at the stormtrooper's side, and it's a little bit leggy. Nice, I like that. Okay, and we will duplicate this by pressing Shift D and then move it along the x-axis. Now let's press RZ to rotate it on the z-axis, and we'll press 180. There we go. Now I like that texture a lot more. But we got one more prop to add, so let's file, import, and we'll import our E11 OBJ. And we'll just go back into render settings. Actually, we'll go into solid. Just go into solid because all we really need here is to pose it. Awesome. Let's bring that up. 180 it. Okay. And we'll do GY, GZ, GX. And it doesn't quite match up, so we'll just kind of move things along, and that's pretty good. Awesome. Now pressing, let's go back into rendered, and it's got no texture. So you see here, it's an emission node right now, which is a little bit weird. No, it's not. Okay. So now that we press this again, you can see we got principled BSDF. This is pretty easy to texture, but I'll just kind of walk you through it. Make it black. It's a metal, so let's crank the metal up. That's going to make it nice and shiny, which the preview should show. There we go. And we crank roughness down. Nice. Crank specular down. See what that's looking like. There we go. Now it looks more like an E11, a nice shiny E11. Okay, so we'll press that. Awesome. Now we're going to want to so let's get rid of node editor. We don't really need it anymore. So we're going to go into the corner here. See this little icon pop up? We're going to click and drag down. See this little arrow? And now we're back to full screen mode. Now let's press Control-Alt-0, and our camera is immediately going to switch and match the view of our scene. So we'll move our camera however we like it. Zoom in a little bit so it's more realistic. Okay. Yep, I like that. But remember, we want to turn denoising on, so we're going to go down to here, click on denoising, awesome, and we'll just file render this.